We'll kick it off again. So welcome to brigades, groups, and our guest tonight for the District 2 Q&A. Tonight's Q&A and information session is with some of our emergency support partners. We've got 4 or 5 people on tonight that are going to give a bit of an understanding about how they interact with CFA and each other and their roles and responsibilities. So before I introduce the people and we kick it off, I'd just like to do acknowledgement to country. So the City of Greater Bendigo is on Jar Jar Rung country, whose ancestors and their descendants are the traditional owners of this country. We acknowledge their living culture and their unique role in the life of this region. So as I said, welcome tonight. So the guests that we have tonight, kicking it off, I'll introduce first up is Sue Moses. Sue is City of Greater Bendigo MERO. We've got Tony Glantley, the City of Greater. Sue is the Municipal Fire Prevention Officer. Sorry, Sue. Tony's the MERO, the Municipal Emergency Response Officer. Supporting Forest Fire Management tonight, we've got Paul Bates, and also he has got on also online Tony Scott. And last but not least is Sharon Matheson. Sharon is works for VicPol, and she is the Municipal Emergency Response Coordinator, or the MERC. So tonight, Tony's got a meeting to go to next, and I was just wondering if you're online, Tony.
Yeah, g'day Hugh, g'day everyone else, how are you?
G'day Tony, how's things going? So Tony, just first off tonight, you and I, me as the RDO and CFA work closely together across the fire danger period, but also probably all year round. So if you could, just for the people online tonight, just a little bit about yourself, your role with the council, and what the MERO does.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks, Hugh. Look, I might start by just introducing myself and where I fit into council, because it gives some perspective of how I fit into the role that I do play in emergency management. I'm the Senior Works Coordinator at the City, and I look after a team in the Works unit, and I've been there for nearly 30 years in local government. So I've got a little bit of experience in local government, and through that, it's not my substantive role, emergency management, but there is a requirement on local government to have a legislated position of the MERO, which I note you said it was a response officer. It's actually a resource officer. So Municipal Emergency Resource Officer is what my title is. That position's part of the, it's, as I said, legislated by the EM Act, and responsible for the coordination of council resources in an emergency. There's a few acronyms that come with emergency management, but I assume the audience we're talking to is going to be reasonably familiar with those types of things, so I'll try and spell it out a little bit as I go through. But yeah, so the MERO position, we look after the resources and for the response and recovery efforts in, to support the lead agency in any emergency. We do work closely with the MRMs, which is another role within local government, more so in the recovery side of things, and that's a municipal recovery manager. And we liaise with a lot of emergency management personnel. As I said, my role is not a full-time, but we do have full-time emergency management coordinator, and I think Sue Moses is coming up later in emergency management full-time, and our lead MRM's full-time. So we've got a number of different tasks and duties we have to perform in the MERO role, or I do. It's largely to do with if there's an emergency and local government needs a resource, the lead agency would give us a ring, or the MERC would give us a ring. Generally, we contribute to the municipal management plan, emergency management plan. We have input into that and the development of the plan that the local government has for emergency situations. To hold my position, as I said, I've been in local government a little while, so it probably helps the fact that I've got some knowledge of municipal resources and what we have, and particularly around the, the earth moving side of things, where typically a lot of the fire or requests for resources come from. So that's a help. Local services and contractors is another area that I'm pretty familiar with. So We have to give a fair bit of leadership in this role, so there's some decision making. I've found over the journey that I do get a lot of support from the likes of the CFA, Hugh, and those types of people that have made the call in. So I do get that support there. But some decision making capabilities is another role that we need to have. We need to know the hazards and respond to accordingly to each different hazard that comes through. And we collaborate and establish local networks. I think that's a huge thing with the MERO role is knowing who's who and who to contact. I think that's very important and also to have a good local knowledge of the area, which obviously I've been in Bendigo for quite a period of time now, and I can't remember now, but yeah, I've been in Bendigo for a long time. So I know the area reasonably well, and working on the roads, I tend to know different roads that we need to go down. So some of my duties, I've just got a list of things here, so forgive me if I'm reading off, but yeah, we're to ensure that council resources are made available to the MERC, which is the lead copper, Sharon, that fills that role at the moment, but there's a number of different MERCs that I've dealt with over the years. That's for the response activities and with conjunction with the MRN if there's recovery activities to undertake as well. We've got to have our procedures and system in place so we can monitor the requests and account for the expenditure that we actually have as well. That's a pretty important part of the role, particularly in the light of a bigger event. You know, we need to make sure that whatever resources are accounted for and work out that budget for that. We've got to have a good database, and once again, that's largely about having those contacts. You get to know people over a period of time. We've got a responsibility for the municipal emergency coordination centres, which is the relief centres that we open. So on a request and in conjunction with the MERC and the MRMs, we're responsible for opening them up. So in the event of emergency and people need temporary relief, they can come to these centres. Yeah, we deal with the field staff and emergency services and other agencies in the municipal district. Pretty much said that. Yeah, so pretty much, you know, it's a ballpark of what my role is. Over the years, I've had different jobs. A lot of it's been with single incidents. It's a large part of my role where we may get a call up for, you know, some temporary fencing or some structural damage on a house, typically from a house fire, or it can be from car damage, and we react to that. And I tend to get those resources to cover that off. I must say, well, I'm talking to this audience that there is a misconception sometimes that we have structural engineers at council. We don't actually have structural engineers. So when we're asked to come and assess that, we can sometimes provide some sort of assistance or guidance from our building surveyors, building people, but they are not structural engineers, so they can't actually say whether it is or isn't damaged, and a lot of the times that's in the middle of the night, and it's pretty hard to do so as well. So it's a difficult one. That we have had different requests over the year, and chemical spills is another one that we've dealt with from time to time. It's also a fairly tricky one because in the middle of the night trying to get someone, because council themselves aren't chemical experts, but from my perspective, if I'm asked from a lead agency, you know, to deal with it because it is on the road, it might be a case that I'm more blocking the road off or protecting the area until such day, the next working day, we may have availability of different people or chemical hazmat ability that can come in and shore that up, rather than the fact that we would action the chemicals. It's more the fact of looking after the general public. Another thing that I wrote down there was about fires. We've sometimes been asked out to bushfires and for that pushing the trees over. Once again, council don't have the ROP systems on top of the cabins to be able to accommodate pushing trees over. So, you know, within reason, we could come and do some smaller stuff, but typically that would be farmed out, and part of my responsibility is to chase up some contractors, I suppose, if we are asked for that. But councils don't actually have the availability of those ROPS cabins to be able to take that on. I do fill in from time to time in different roles, you know, not just my MERO role, but I put some other hats on, and one of them is what's called an MLO, which is a emergency management liaison officer, and that's where we get called into different bigger events. I've had to fill that role. I think it's 3 times now. One was on a Code Red day, but the most notable is probably Tallangatta over there, and help with other municipalities in a similar role to the MERO, but more broader and taken in some of the relief and recovery activities as well. And just recently, the ICC was set up for the pandemic, COVID-19, and I filled a couple of days over there, just looking after general requests from a local government, and more or less putting people in contact that are looking for that relief and recovery type activity. So I don't know what else you got there.
Yeah. No, great, a great rundown of the role and responsibilities, and for the people online tonight, I would, as the regional duty officer or coordinator, would make contact with the MERC, and then via yourself leading into preparedness fire danger day. So Tony, our standard request for the councils in District 2 would be 2 graders, 2 water tankers on standby, and then depending as we get into extreme fires, we had a couple of extreme days, and then of course potentially a Code Red, we may request a bit more. What's some of the coordination that you have to do around your graders and water tankers? Do they go about their normal business on a total fire ban day, or are they placed strategically in the yard?
No, we don't place them strategically in the yard. We don't actually work on total fire bans, so we've made a company, I don't know if it's policy, but it is a work practice that we don't work total fire ban days out in the bushes with the graders. But we don't typically bring them into the yard because we think they're better strategically placed, because we have, I think there's 6 graders that we have around the municipality, and they're all in their different areas. So if we do have an event, we've got access to that equipment pretty well straight up in whatever area that event happens to occur. With the water carts, we have 2 or 3 water carts. With 3, one's a bit smaller, but we have 2 that would be good for firefighting purposes. But we also have a number of contractors available, because for grading roads, we contract all our water cart facilities out. So we have a good working relationship with them, and when we're asked by yourself or whoever to put them on standby, they are the ones that are typically put on standby, the contractors. And then we obviously, our staff are really good at local government, and they tend to understand the situation and be vigilant about it. A lot of the blokes, some of the blokes that work in local government are CFA volunteers, so they certainly understand, and they're available upon request. We have a pretty good resource to choose from in those scenarios.
Yeah, definitely, and especially potentially not this year. We've had good runoff and good rains, but over the last couple of years, especially the last 3 to 5 years, with the conditions north of Bendigo, surface water's been low. Sometimes the first call we put in is not only for extra tankers to get water there from CFA, it's to the council to get that water support. You also touched on before, just quickly, around the recovery centres and things like that. So if we had an event in Bendigo, what's some of the areas that you would look to open up to support people going to?
I've held the MERO role since a fair few people may remember Alex Malone. So when he retired, I took over from Alex, and I've only had to ever open up a relief centre once, and it was only just last year out at Huntley there. So that's the only time I've ever had to do that. But we are ready. We've got the Epsom Sports Ground. You're going to put me on the spot here to rename them all, and there's one in the church in Solomon Street. We also have the showgrounds. There's another emergency relief centre that we have available. So
they're a bit like the grader setup. They're strategically placed depending on where the event may take place.
Yeah. So we have a primary relief centres. I think there's 5 or 6 primary relief centres, like you say, strategic throughout the municipality. Almore being the probably north one that we use. And then there's a list of secondary relief centres that we have access to as well, but they're probably not as well set up as the primary ones. Ready.
Yeah, right. No, fantastic. So at this stage, Tony, if there's any questions for Tony, if you could pop them into the chat or put your hand up. But in going forward, with COVID-19, has that played is that going to play a different part with the MERO role and some of the support services or response?
Look, it has been discussed, and it's actually getting discussed at the moment around the relief centre and our COVID safe plans for those types of things. So we're going to be under the same scrutiny, as everyone else is at the moment, and with social distancing. So it's a bit untested, and it would be a challenge, I think, once we get to that. I hope we never do, but if we get that scenario, but we're just writing plans at the moment on how we may manage a relief centre through the COVID pandemic and still accommodate everyone for their temporary relief.
Yeah, fantastic. I think everyone's now got to think outside the box, especially around COVID and where we're situated and depending on the stage we're on. So, look, Tony, I know that you do have another meeting to go to tonight. I really appreciate you coming on board and giving us a rundown of your role and the council's role and responsibilities. It's been great. So, thanks a lot, and I'll talk to you soon.
No worries, Hugh. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to do that. I will. Can I just mention one thing that I didn't say, and that's around those single incident fires. Local government and I play a role in this, but it does fall back on the recovery manager a bit more. But we do offer that temporary relief scenario. So if they have no relatives or they can't get any access to accommodation, local government can provide a couple of nights for accommodation. Just to get them out of mind, and then the toiletries and those things that may be required. So yeah, another service that we provide that I never mentioned, and it forms part of my role as a MERO to coordinate a bit of that with the MRMs.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. And just for your information, I should have warned everyone too. I'm actually the roster duty coordinator for the Loddon Mallee region tonight. So I'm on call, and I've just spoken to your counterpart 15 minutes or 20 minutes ago from Loddon to support a person who's lost their house tonight. So I really do appreciate it.
No worries, Hugh. And good luck, everyone. And thanks for the opportunity again. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Tony. The next person that I was going to have a chat to, I haven't met her yet, but I spoke to her during the week. It's Sharon Matheson. Sharon works for VicPol and is the current Municipal Emergency Response Coordinator. So just wondering if you're on the line, Sharon.
I am, you. How are you tonight?
Yeah, g'day. How you going?
Good, thank you.
That's good. So yeah, welcome to our Q&A. So the District 2 CFA Q&A, similar to Tony. Just wondering if you could give people a little bit of background on yourself and your role in policing, and then of course what the role of the MERC does in Central Victoria.
Sure. Thanks very much for having me. My name's Sharon Matheson. I'm a Senior Sergeant at the Bendigo Police Station. I've been here at Bendigo since December 2019. Been with Victoria Police for 25 years. I've been a MERC for 4 days. So my experience as a MERC isn't great. However, I have, prior to working at Bendigo, I used to work in East Gippsland. So I've had a lot of experience with emergency management. We had floods and fires there. Also, I was in the Latrobe Valley during the Black Saturday fires. So I played a role at the ICC, both in Latrobe Valley and in East Gippsland, but I'm new to the city of Greater Bendigo, so there's a lot of processes here that I'm not familiar with. But what I can say is the MERC role. The MERC is the Municipal Emergency Response Coordinator. It's a position that is appointed by the Divisional Superintendent. There's a MERC in each local government area. So there's one in Campaspe. I'm the MERC in Greater Bendigo, one in Macedon Ranges. In each LGA, there's a different MERC. The primary role of the MERC, of course, is to ensure that there's effective control at an emergency. So we need to make sure that the correct control agency is in charge of the incident. And most of the time, well, pretty much all of the time, that can be easily identified. There are some incidents where it's a little bit tricky, however. We also need to make sure that there are appropriate support agencies either at the incident or on the way to the incident, and they're providing appropriate support. We need to make sure that there's effective information sharing, and that's usually done through the use of emergency management teams and meetings at incidents. The meetings are held quite regularly, and that's the best way of getting information to each of the different agencies so that everyone knows exactly what's going on, what's expected. Everyone knows what can be offered by each agency and what sort of resources and specialisations they're able to to offer. It's my job to ensure that the MERO is notified of any emergencies, and that Tony, as the MERO, is able to access the municipal resources. So if there was a fire or a flood that happened this evening, I'd be on the phone to Tony to say, look, we've got this incident, this is what's going on, have you got available resources in case we need them? It's also the job of the MERC to attend at the Incident Control Centre when there's an incident, if an ICC has been activated, or to send a delegate. So can't be there all the time, but where possible, then yes, I'd be at the ICC. It's also my job to make sure that the incident controller has been appointed and that they're identifiable, that they're wearing their tabards. Notoriously, police have been the worst in that area, and we haven't had our tabards on it. I think we are getting better at that, but it's the job of the MERC to make sure that everyone knows who the incident controller is and that they're performing an appropriate control role as well. Importantly for this audience, I think, the MERC is responsible for sourcing equipment that's not readily available at an incident. So an example of that might be if you've got a campaign fire or something that's prolonged and you need to create a road through a bush area and you don't have a bulldozer or you don't have access to that sort of equipment, then I get on to the MERO as the MERC and try and arrange some additional resources. If the equipment can't be sourced from the City of Greater Bendigo, then I escalate it up to the REMI, our Regional Emergency Management Inspector, and he'll be able to source equipment from other local government areas as well. So, you know, we work across the state. It's not just isolated to Bendigo. I think that the main role for police, at least anyway, at emergency incidents is, particularly for fires, is traffic management. We need to ensure that that's coordinated well and that we have enough resources and enough units to man those. We also man the relief centres, which can be tricky, particularly in times like this where we've got the additional issues with COVID. So at relief centres, we need to be mindful of you know, people keeping their distance. We also need to be mindful of things like family violence after emergency incidents, because all of a sudden we've got everyone from a community forced into an area where they might not get along with everyone. So we need to monitor that as well. Our main priority also is evacuation procedures. So the incident controller makes the call whether or not there'll be an evacuation, and we assist with that. It's our role to coordinate all evacuations. The other thing I guess I can talk about is leading up. So that's all sort of what happens when there is an incident. In preparation for an incident, the MERC sits on the Municipal Emergency Management Planning Committee, the MC, and as part of that, they work out the Municipal Emergency Management Plan. I think Tony spoke briefly about that as well. And part of the considerations are, is the plan current? Is it readily available? Has it been tested? And is there a contact list? All that sort of stuff. We've got contact lists on our mobile devices now, so we should be able to contact all of the services that are required, no matter where we are. No matter where we are in the state, we should have access to all that. We need to also give consideration about where the high-risk locations are. We need to monitor the kits for the register, find and reunite. So when we do manage the evacuations, we've got the red kits where we can work with the Red Cross to record all of the to register all the names of the evacuees and all of that information. We need to make sure that the neighbourhood safe places are identified and that they're publicly displayed. It's not something that we actually do ourselves, but we need to make sure that that's done, and that there are deputy MERCs that have been nominated as well. I think that's about it. We do have some plans that we put together when we know that it's going to be a severe or an extreme fire danger day. We set up the ICC and we set up the IPOC and make sure that we've got sufficient resources to man all of the functions, all of the cells in those. We also have fire patrols, dedicated units that do fire patrols just to keep a lookout for any spot fires and for suspicious people that might be, in areas of high fire risk, I guess. I don't know if there's anything else that I can think of, Hugh, unless you've got some questions or anything else that you'd like me to speak to specifically.
Sharon, it's Michelle here. Hugh's just had to take a call, unfortunately, so I'll pick up where he left off. I will throw it out to our members. Has anyone got any questions for Sharon? Feel free to either raise your hand or type it into the box we've got. No, nothing coming up immediately. Thanks so much, Sharon. Good luck in the job.
You're welcome. Thank you.
And I'm sure we will see you around. Sorry, just admitting a couple of people in.
I just want to know who do you answer to, Sharon?
In my role as the MERC?
Yes.
So I guess the next person up is there's a RERC, which is the Regional Emergency Response Coordinator, who is a superintendent. In my role as a senior sergeant, of course, I'm at the police station, and my superior is the inspector, the local area commander, who looks after the whole of the Bendigo.
So that's Tony.
Sorry?
Tony Commodore, is it?
No, I don't know who that is, sorry. My local area commander is Troy Hardigan.
Oh, right over. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Pete. All right. So yes, thank you so much, Sharon.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So next up tonight, as far as our guests go, we've got Sue Moses, who is our Municipal Fire Prevention Officer. Are you around, Sue?
Yes, I am. Thanks very much. My service is a bit poor. Let me know if I'm dropping out and I might need to turn off the camera so you can at least hear me as opposed to see me. Look, I'm Sue Moses. I'm the Municipal Fire Prevention Officer. I've been at the City Greater Bendigo for 5 years. I've had about 15 years experience in local government, working in community development roles and emergency management roles, involved with 2009 Black Saturday fires and floods in the next 2 years after that. I was actually living in Macedon at the time of the Ash Wednesday fire, so that shows my age a little bit, as well as perhaps my interest in fire prevention as a bit of a lifelong passion as well. So look, the Municipal Fire Prevention Officer role, MFPO role, is also a role that's legislated requirement of any municipality or local council that sits in a CFA district is required to have an MFPO. So a lot of the smaller councils have that as a tack-on role to another job, usually local laws. At City Greater Bendigo, very fortunate that it is a full-time role. So we're able to put a little bit more effort into that work rather than just that time of the year when we do inspections. But talking about inspections and notices, that's how most people in brigades probably know me. Leading up to the summer, we try and inspect all properties across the municipality, and where we find that there's hazard that needs to be cleaned up, which is generally long grass, rubbish, fallen trees, that sort of thing, we can issue what's called a fire prevention notice. So we do about 2,000 recorded inspections, but we try and look at every property, not so much farming properties, but more of those properties on the fringe of the township areas, and with a city like Bendigo, the forest, as we know, comes right into the city. So we issue a lot of notices right in the very urban area as well for clean up, because we know that ember attack can come right into the main part of the city. So when we do those inspections, we can't issue a notice to any Crown land or government land, but we certainly work with all agencies. So if I notice some unmanaged land or land that there's concern with, if it's DELWP or Colavan Water or so forth, we'll talk to those agencies, as I also do meet fortnightly with our own Parks and Works unit to discuss any roadside works and so forth. So I don't manage the roadside slashing contract, but I do have, I'm sort of the second to the manager in the roadside slashing contract to make sure that the areas that we have defined for fire breaks are slashed. And yeah, so that's something that obviously starts to happen about this time of the year. So some of the other roles for the MFPO, we also do local laws permits to burn. So I oversee that program, but most of the inspections are now done by our local laws staff. So that's the permits to burn for people to have a burn off. And there's a number of changes we've made to those local law permits in recent years. And I also can do a stubble burn permit, and that's obviously a CFA permit. So we don't always get a lot of those. Some years more than others. This year will be a bigger year just to do with the rain. So those stubble burn permits can be issued by CFA or MFPO, and I work quite closely with the captain. So if we issue a stubble burn permit, the captain in that area is always involved to give comment. Another part of my role is fire access tracks. So there's a network of fire access tracks across the municipality. These are not the ones through DELWP for us, but they're the ones on your gravel or unused, virtually unused sort of roads to traffic. But they are tracks that are fire access tracks for appliances if there's a fire. So I inspect those every year, and we have a grading program, or not so much always grading, but if they don't need grading, they might often need some rock or patching or whatever to make sure they're accessible, get lower, limb branches removed and that sort of thing as well. There's a fairly large component of the role that is committees. So I provide the executive support to the Municipal Fire Management Planning Committee, and I also oversee the plan and also what we call the risk register, which is the identification of risks across the municipality, and then the treatments. So the treatments could be slashing, burning, it could be community education. We also have the regional committee that sits above that, and I'm also representative on a number of other committees, which is like the Joint Fuel Management Program Committee, which is a fairly new committee. Then there's the Bendigo Bushfire Mitigation Plan, which is also a fairly new committee that's with Simon Brown and Jonathan Andrea and DELWP around some planning in the Fortuna area largely. So there's a community education component to the role. So in that space, I work fairly closely with people like Paul Tangy from CFA. Planning is another area. So I work closely with our planning department if there's new subdivisions, any new planning for housing or development. I would be often asked to comment on those. I'm not an expert in that space, and once again, when it comes to those sorts of things, I will often go to the captain in that area and ask them their thoughts on development in their area and how will that impact them if they had to respond to fire and that sort of thing. So I'm often a conduit between different departments of council and then other fire agencies and local experts, and that very often is the brigades. So grants, I apply for a lot of grants to try and get work done. At the moment, I've just put in a grant application for some fire mitigation works at Twin Rivers area, and that's been working with the Epiloc group. Yes, I think I mentioned that I work with our outdoor staff around slashing and vegetation management. Fire plugs, that's another area that I oversee, is the fire plug program. And so we don't do the water component of the fire plugs, but it's the markers. So making sure that there's a post, there's a marker, and that the plug is accessible. And in the last 12 months, we've brought that program in-house. So Tony Galletley's team are doing that work, and we're getting a lot more efficiencies. And what we also have is a lot of the brigades also inspect them, and we have an app now that they can use, which we provide a license to that app, so that it's all just done very quickly on an app and it comes straight through to us. So that's taken all the filling out of, papers and long lists from brigades back to myself. And neighbourhood safer places. So the neighbourhood safer places, bushfire of last resort, I inspect those each leading up to the summer. There's a whole fairly lengthy online process to delegate them or reinstate them. And then get all the signage ready and then inspect them monthly in the bushfire season to make sure that they're compliant and the signs are all up to scratch. And look, that's probably the main part of the role. I do attend all of the group meetings for the 3 different groups in the municipality, and my name is in the contact book. So I'm very often just, if someone in the brigade or any of the other agencies have a question around fire issues, or not even fire issues, if you're trying to figure out who do I find out what from council, ring me, and I might not have the answer, but I'll put you onto the right person. It often is Tony, or it might be someone in planning. So I do get a lot of calls from captors and brigade members after they've attended a fire and that sort of thing. So look, you can ring me 7 days a week. I'll always answer the work phone, and if you have a question, I can try and help you out. So I think that's probably all I'll cover without taking up too much time, and happy to take any questions you.
Great, thanks. Apologies to Sharon. I had a little job at Kahuna where unfortunately someone has dropped a torch into a unleaded petrol tank at the fuel station. So that's been managed locally. So yeah, thanks, Sue. Just a couple of questions for, so the meetings, some of the meetings that you attend, are they quarterly or 6 monthly, the municipal fire prevention meetings?
Yeah, so the local meeting is 4 times a year. The regional meeting is 4 times a year, and the new JFMP meeting seems to be more frequent than that at the moment, as that's a new process. It used to be known as the DELWP FOPS, and now that we're working in this cross tenure space, DELWP have set up a new meeting which involves all the agencies, because we're trying to work in that space where it's not just plan burn in Crown land, but looking at bringing all agencies together. So there'll be more work in the future on traditional line of burns, grooming works, and bringing us all together, so we're all talking about that and working together, and it's not just an isolated piece of work that's done on Crown land. So that's sort of the changing space in fire management. And I think out of all the Royal Commissions and all the hearings and the processes that are happening now, I think there'll be some big changes in the future where it will become a requirement that we all work closer together, and programs might be brought together as one, perhaps at some time in the future as well. So a lot of that work is known at the moment as Safer Together.
Safer Together, yes, and that seems to be expanding, or it's definitely there's a lot of programs going on at the moment. As you're saying, just touching on the neighbourhood safer places. So, we're talking about the City of Greater Bendigo. With them, what is a neighbourhood safer place, and what do you have to look for to make sure they're checked off leading into the fire danger period?
Yeah, so I think we've got 11 now. I can provide that list. So neighbourhood safer place is a bushfire place of last resort. So we have to be very careful that community don't think it's a great place to go and there'll be, soft drinks and CFA trucks there. It won't be. It is somewhere that, they were developed after the Black Saturday fires as a place, as if all your plans fail, you can go to a neighbourhood safer place, and you may survive a fire there. So the process to get one up and running in the first instance is that they'll be nominated because community have asked for one, and we try and find a suitable location. And in very high risk areas, you often can't find a suitable location because it has to be checked off by us CFA. So Mark Kelly does those assessments here, and it has to be able to meet requirements around radiant heat and ember attack and that sort of thing. So that's the initial process to get one up and running, and then they are signed accordingly, and the signs do say you may not survive a fire here. So it's certainly not a great place to go unless everything else has failed, and they are just an open space. So some municipalities do have a neighbourhood safer place that is a building, but that's quite hard. They, to meet that criteria, they have to be very sound. So most of ours, well, they all are just open spaces. So and everything from the car park at Lansell Plaza to the middle of the racetrack out on
Epsom. Yeah. Awesome.
No, not at Epsom, the trotting track.
The trotting track. Yep, out at Juniton.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, look, Sue, there isn't any questions at this stage that have popped up. Really appreciate you coming on board tonight. I know myself being in the catchment role, work closely with yourself and the council. So, yeah, thanks for coming on board tonight and providing an overview on how CFA and you work with the other agencies.
Thank you. I'll hang around if there's any questions later. That's cool.
Great, thanks, Sue. The next person I'd like to welcome on tonight is from Paul Bates from Forest Fire Management. I was just wondering if you're online, Paul.
Yeah, g'day Hugh, how are you and everyone? I'll just turn my camera on so you can see me too.
Good on you. Thanks, Paul. Welcome.
No
Welcome tonight. I had a chat to Tony Scott a couple of weeks ago and flagged that tonight's Q&A is about bringing together the council, the MERC, and different agencies to talk about how we interact with each other. And yeah, and I suppose and if you could just provide us with a little bit of background about yourself, your role, and of course, leading into the fire danger period, things that you guys are up to in DELWP.
worries. No worries. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. So I'm the Regional Manager for Forest Fire Operations for Loddon Valley region. So I've been in the job nearly 30 years. I'm a Level 3 Incident Controller, Operations Officer, and also Burn Controller, Planned Burn Operations Officer too. So that's my background. What I might actually do, you mentioned DELWP, and you mentioned Forest Fire Management Victoria, and some people get pretty confused, as I did for a while too, because as you know, we change names quite often. But Forest Fire Management Victoria, the intent is it's a brand name that will be retained even when DELWP becomes something else. As new governments come in, they change priorities and set up departments in different ways. So Forest Fire Management Victoria is made up of DELWP, Parks Victoria, and clearly, I'm sure many of the audience tonight will know local DELWP and PV people, but also Melbourne Water, who maintain a pretty significant fire capacity in the Melbourne water catchments, and also Vic Forest. So once again, no presence in this part of the world really, but for those people who've been to campaign fires in the East Vic Forest, have some really experienced fire people, given the nature of their work, and also access to logging contractors who provide machinery, for those remote fires in the mountains, and probably the best operators the state have got for that type of equipment. So Forest Fires Management is a name that includes those agencies. Yeah. I'll just quickly talk about, so for District 2, you're within our Murray Goldfields District. The Murray Goldfields District takes in District 2 and what is District 20. And so Forest Fire Management Victoria, we're the control agency for fires on nearly, not all, but the majority of public land in the state, and that's a requirement in the Forest Act for our secretary to do works that firstly prevent fire and then to stop the spread of fire on public land. But obviously we do that in partnership, particularly with the CFA in Western Victoria, where that's the bulk of the firefighting force in this part of the world. I'll just, in no particular order, Hugh, I've just jotted down a few points. You mentioned COVID. Like everyone else, we're doing a lot of policy on COVID at the moment, how we're going to operate. So it's something we need to be really aware of in how we go forward in the summer, and particularly with our staff safety and wellbeing is number one, as it is for everyone. So just making sure we can operate as safe as we possibly can, understanding we are going to respond to fire, and we're also a support agency for floods and storms and lots of other events too. So I'm sure everyone's going through that. The Epsom ICC is located, people may be aware of that, located in the DELWP office at Bendigo. So that's where, if we get a larger fire in this footprint, the transfer of control would move to that facility, and there'll be a joint incident management team in there made up of staff from DELWP, Parks Vic, so Forest Fire Management, CFA, SES, and maybe other agencies in there. But I'm pleased to say that facility in the next few years is going to be redeveloped. We'll have a new depot there, and we'll have a chance to redesign an incident control centre there. So I don't like to say it, I think it's probably the worst layout of an incident control centre in the state, so we'll be getting something better in the next few years, which is terrific. Just people may be aware, we manage the fire towers in the area. There's 8 fire towers around the district. And as I said, we're a support agency in a whole lot of different events, supporting CFA and SES with the skills we can do safely. I've written some notes and I'm struggling to see them in a different light, I've got to say. I need some glasses. I think just of interest coming into the season, we're rolling out G-Wagons that people may have seen around the district in Bendigo, the smaller towns, you know, Inglewood or Heathcote or Castlemaine, Macedon, Maryborough. Also bringing in some Unimogs. So our old red tankers have been retired, so people may have seen those big white trucks they are going round, and they look pretty cool because they've got the falling protection. So it's a requirement for our vehicles to have falling, you know, tree fall protection on them, and that was a recommendation accepted by the department out of a pretty tragic incident in the northeast a few years ago. What we will be doing though is maintaining a mixed fleet of vehicles, so we still have other type of vehicles in the fleet, but we'll have this capacity to send our crew away to high hazard tree areas in vehicles that will offer better protection. So you'll see those out around the place. We manage what we call the external plant panel. So that's a panel right across the state, but with local suppliers here also around District 2 who provide heavy machinery for fire response. And it's a really good option. And I heard before the MERO can access machinery, which they do on occasion when needed, but there is a panel of plant there that is inspected every year to make sure that machinery is up to date. They have insurance, their operators are trained. That's a requirement to get on our panel. And they're available, obviously, for everyone to access. So you'll be getting a machine, you've got confidence it's safe to use, and the people using it will have some fire experience. We manage the Bendigo Air Base, so that's where the helicopter is located. That's another job we do there. So we have staff who just manage that facility in conjunction with CFA, obviously, but there's a fair bit of work goes into that. I guess the other part people may be interested in, we're also a land manager, so we do forest management in DELWP, and PV do, or Parks Vic do parks management. So what that means is we have a really extensive fuel management program, and in the lead up to summer, we have about 2,000 hectares we slash or mulch each year. We have a pretty significant plant burning program, and this spring we've got burns dotted all around the district again, probably hopefully deliver 12 to 15 burns, which we do quite often in junction with the CFA resources goes on. Importantly, we manage several thousand kilometres of roads on public land, and also strategic fire road network, which has been mapped to allow access to large machinery into bigger forest areas, just to allow that machinery in for fire response. We also undertake, listening to Sharon before, so police or VicPol are the lead for arson, but we have compliance staff who on total fire ban days will regularly do compliance patrols, as will our depot staff. They'll just go out and check campgrounds and picnic areas, but developing some pretty cool products based on, we have some fire prediction modelers. So one thing we're keen to roll out this year is a campfire consequence mapping product that will direct where our compliance staff will go patrolling over summer on total fire ban days, just looking for, you know, either illegal or abandoned campfires, and it's going to be based on where, if those fires got away, based on fire runs on those days, where those fires would have the greatest impact on community. So we're just trying to get a bit smarter about how we apply our somewhat limited resources into some of that work. The other thing I wanted to talk about, hazardous trees. We all know how dangerous hazardous trees are, and we'll sometimes get requested to support at fires for tree assessment, which we'll always do, but I just want to let everyone know we don't do that at night. So we don't assess and we don't manually fall hazardous trees at night. It's just a safety wellbeing issue for our staff. Once again, it's not something we're going to do. So if you're at a fire and you need trees looked at, we can certainly do that during the day if you need that type of knowledge or skill that our field crew have in that. But, you know, there's other options, and manually falling is a last option. Can you push it with a machine? Can you burn out around a tree to increase the black off the tree, or whatever the case may be? Just think about other options there before we decide to put someone under a potentially dangerous tree with a chainsaw. So that's probably all I've got. Hugh, if you're still there, and happy to take questions. or if anyone's got any questions, I'm good to go.
Sorry, it looks like you must be on another call.
I thought so, Michelle. That's fine.
Raised back when I heard that.
Yeah.
Has anybody got any questions for Paul at all? No. All right.
Michelle, I have a question. Ian Shelton.
Hi, Ian. Go for it.
So what's the view at the moment about local brigades getting involved in burns?
Yeah, so
with Forest Fire Management Victoria, I think we've got some limitations around COVID-19, of course, but nevertheless, that's been something that brigades have done well together with Forest Fire Management in previous years.
No, it's been a great help. So we're always keen, wherever possible, for brigades to come out and help. In fact, one of the jobs of our planned burn ops officers is to contact the local brigade or captain and make sure they know the burn's on, and just invite them if anyone's would like to come out. We'd always appreciate it. What we have been told at this point, because of COVID, is CFA aren't attending planned burns. So once that advice changes, we'll definitely be just letting brigades know when planned burns are happening. And I think, given the weather conditions this season, I reckon our fuel reduction planned burning program will start early to mid-October and probably go through to maybe, I don't know, early to mid-November. So there'll be a 3 to 4 week period. So we work really closely, as Sue said, on the Joint Fuel Management Committee with Lisa Haynes and staff there. So if that advice to CFA brigades and foals was to change, everyone would be welcome to come, and we'll make sure you know.
Great, thanks. Sorry, Paul, I had another call, the life of the RDC, so apologies for that.
That's fine.
That's the last one for the next 10 minutes or so. But just a question also, Paul, I missed a little bit of your presentation, but I work pretty closely hand in hand, CFA and yourselves, leading up to a preparedness day or a total fire ban day. What's some of the equipment or resources, if you're not deployed elsewhere in the state, what would likely be at a works depot or in Murray Goldfields area, equipment-wise or vehicles?
Yeah, so it depends on so we have 11 depots around the place, with Bendigo being the biggest one, but the typical depot will have one large tanker, be it a Unimog or an older red tanker, and probably 3, 4, maybe 5 slip-ons, and probably 12 to 15 firefighters available. So on any day, they'll be out in the bush working and ready to respond. On total fire ban days, what we do is, depends on the day, what it's like in the morning. At some point during the day, those resources are called back into the depot and they'll just be placed on readiness to go. So, it's discussions we've had. So you'd expect from a local depot, as I say, a tanker and probably 3, 4, 5 slip-ons with firefighters in it to respond. And potentially also we have 2 first attack dozers, one at Macedon, one over at Avoca, that will respond to. And on those days, we generally have at least one large piece of plant, so a D6 on call. That's a contractor one. They're deployed through our duty officer, or if the incident gets big enough, via the incident management team in Bendigo.
Yeah, absolutely. A thing you touched on before was the panel of contractors. I know from a CFA RDO point of view, there's many times there wouldn't be a week goes past during the fire danger period I don't touch base with the duty officer, and a role that they support CFA greatly in is managing hazardous trees. So that's something that we aren't able to do, but you have got people that can do it, and also getting excavators and dozers to help us, especially after a lightning event's gone through. We've got multiple tree fires, etc. Those sort of things.
Yeah, that's right. So I did talk about hazardous trees, and we on our land or supporting CFA, we do that work, and I think it's a core part of our job, because our field crew, that's what they do for bread and butter. We have 12 to 15, I think, advanced fallers throughout the the district and, I don't know, 20 or 30 intermediate fallers who are pretty skilled. I did say one thing we don't do for safety and wellbeing is we don't assess or manually fall hazardous trees for night time. It's just priority and safety. We just don't do it. So if it's a large tree in a paddock burning over night time, it has to come down. It has to be via a machine, or it's next morning. And just think of options. Can you wet it down? Can you burn out around a tree in the grassland, in the night safely, and just increase the black edge off a tree? Just consider those options, and we'll be able to come out daylight the next day and have a look and decide what's needed.
And I suppose just for you said the Murray Goldfields incorporates District 2 and District 20, so that's sort of down. That's a great area, and sometimes I know when we call upon you to help us manage trees, the tree fire I've got, I might have 5 in my patch, but there could be another 5 or 10 spread across that whole area. So, as I said, for the brigades online, and sometimes when we make contact, it does take time to get around to manage them, but also at night we do have to wait until the next day.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and as I said, that's just like, it's a big area to cover. Our District 20 depot, Kahuna, we've got some staff at Echuca and sort of Rushworth over that way, but there's a whole lot of ground in between that does take a while for people to get to. And you're right, if they're lightning strikes, there's generally more than one in the footprint, and we're doing, there's plenty of work going on. So.
Absolutely. The other thing, I'm not sure if you touched on, if I might have missed it, project firefighters. Do you have project firefighters coming on board this year?
Yeah, we do. So we have additional project firefighters again, an extra 10 for the region. So we have those staff coming back on in the first slot on the 28th of September and the rest coming on the 19th of October. So it basically doubles our on-ground workforce in the depots. So it'll take us up to nearly just under 100 people in the depots, responding. So general firefighters and ops officers and above who are on the ground to respond to fire.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's great to have them. And the other thing is the thing that CFA and the agency works well together is, as I said, we support each other. And I know there's rarely a grass and scrub fire that CFA managing that we haven't got support from you guys. So. Look, at this stage, it doesn't look like in the chat there's any other questions. So I suppose Paul, along with Sue and Tony from the City of Greater Bendigo, and Sharon from VicPol, just like to thank you for coming on tonight, providing oversight of what your role is, and also what the role of the of DELWP Forest Fire Management and the other and parks, etc., all do. In supporting CFA, but supporting the community as well. So thanks a lot, Paul.
No, thank you. It's a great initiative. Really interesting to listen to the other speakers too.
Yeah, no problem at all. So that's coming up to 8:30, which is the end of our Q&A for the evening. Again, I'd like to thank the 4 presenters tonight for coming on board. I think it's been a great overview of the role and responsibilities that each of the organisations have. As you can see, that we really work closely together, and behind the scenes across the whole 12-month period, there is a lot goes on to support the community and CFA Fire Brigade. So in saying that, thanks to Michelle again for jumping in. I won't be RDC next week, so that is a real positive. Next week we've got something a little bit different. We're going to try and step into a bit of the science space. We're going to try and touch base and get a CFA scientist on board, and potentially someone that is going to also talk about some plume modelling. So it'll be a bit of a science, and as I said, we're slowly building up towards our fire danger period and some aircraft awareness, grass and scrub fire attack, etc., etc. So thanks to all members for coming on again tonight. I really appreciate it. As I said, any positive or feedback that you can give that or anything you'd like us to look at or have some interaction with, there might be something out there brigades or groups are interested in us delivering, or if someone would like to come on board and they've got a presentation, we'd be more than welcome to have you on board. So again, thanks for tuning in, and I will catch you later. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh.
Thanks, everyone. Just a reminder, I have recorded it, so if you want to watch back or if you know anyone who missed out tonight, let them know they can find that on YouTube. Pete Polworth, you've got your hand up there. Did you have something for us?